Not my story, but a friend's that I've heard a few times. When she was 12, late 90s, her family moved into a 2-story farmhouse in northern Michigan with an attic that ran the length of it. Because of her dad's job, they would move every couple years, living in rentals until his contract was completed. IRC did something with industrial machines and welding. This place was far away from everything. Nearest neighbor over 2 miles away, next person even further, almost an hour to go into town, meaning getting up for the bus was a pain. But cheap AF with a big garden space. Her mom loved the idea of growing all their own veggies and stuff, and dad didn't mind the commute. She has a brother who is older by 1 year, and they both got to have their own rooms. This house's attic access was a stairway through a door in her brother's closet. They were both initially psyched by the idea of setting up a hangout/play space, but their parents forbid it, saying it was filthy, and that if something fell, attic was full of boxes/antique trunks, old furniture, and they got hurt, the parents, wouldn't be able to hear them until maybe it was too late. The kids weren't supposed to even go up there. Adding to the temptation, however, was a locked door at the back end of the attic, which was above my friend's room. They did not have the key to this room. Their dad shoved an old mattress and some other stuff in the way to further deter them. According to her, her parents said the landlord told them the stuff in the attic had been left by previous tenants. He'd never gotten around to sorting through it and didn't care if they went through it themselves. She didn't know or ever think to ask if the landlord ever explained what the room in the attic was. She said that was part of her parents not wanting them to go up there. No idea what was in the boxes and stuff, didn't want the kids finding something dangerous or obscene. Now and then at night, she'd hear quiet footsteps in the attic and stuff getting pushed around. For her brother to get to the end of the attic over her room, he'd have to walk over their parents' room too, and then cross back to get back to his room. She figured he was playing on thin ice and would get caught on his own eventually, not worth it to make drama between them by tattling. Once or twice a week she'd wake up to clear footsteps pacing around quietly, boxes shifting, and eventually this faint rhythmic creaking. She'd close her eyes and fall back asleep with determination, trying not to imagine what a 13-year-old boy was doing in a forbidden attic that might make that sound. After they'd been there about half a year, she woke up late one Saturday morning, looked out the window, and saw her parents working on the garden. She went and ate some cereal, then went back up to her room to play Pokemon for a while. For the first time ever, she heard footsteps up in the attic during the day. Curious, she went to her brother's room. The closet and attic stair door were open. She went up far enough to see into the attic, basically peeking from the stairs, and in a matter of moments saw that many boxes and the mattress had been moved, and the door to the locked room was ajar. Her brother stuck his head out, looked right at her, grinning, and called her by name. "You have to come see this." He beckoned her and slid back out of sight into the room. She told me that she's never felt so wrong and afraid before or since, except for her first time hearing a mountain lion in the woods at night. Immediately bolted back down the stairs and flew all the way out to the yard to tell her parents what her brother was doing, except he was outside too. He had been helping with the garden all morning. They asked her why she looked so scared, and all she could think to say was, "I heard someone in the attic." Her dad told them all to stay there, got his gun out of his truck, and went into the house with their mom, who was going to keep by the phone in the kitchen and call the police if anything happened. Before going in, they gave the kids instructions to get on their bikes and head to the neighbors as fast as they could if the parents didn't come back out in 10 minutes. Several tense minutes of them straddling their bikes and watching mom through the kitchen window from a distance. Dad rapidly cleared the house and attic and came back out, pissed at brother because the attic had obviously been rearranged and the lock opened. Brother denied having ever been up there since they all moved in, citing dust and spiders. Well, someone opened the room, so who was it? What was in there? No light fixture, no window, just an antique wooden rocking chair, nearly falling apart, that didn't match the style of any other in the prefurbished house, facing the wall. Brother. didn't get in much trouble because there was a thick layer of dust, and the only footprints to be found were Dad's, but you could apparently see clear tracks where the boxes and everything had been shoved around to clear the way, and as there wasn't really any other rational explanation, he was grounded for the rest of the summer. Friends said she refused to go near the attic for the rest of the 2 years they were there, sleeping on the downstairs couch whenever she could get away with it just to be even further away, because she would wake up some nights, still hearing quiet footsteps and what she now recognized as rocking. She said the only time she was already awake when it started up after that day, she realized there was no crossing noise, as in the sound of someone crossing the attic to get into the room. Just the quiet sounds of someone settling into a chair and shifting about, sitting and rocking in the space almost directly over her bed. She has told me that as an adult, she still has 2 recurring nightmares about the attic, one where whatever it was that looked like her brother sticks his head out of that door, like when he called to her, and he just smiles and beckons. The whole thing, door and doppelganger, gets closer and closer while she's frozen on the spot, until she's so close he starts to reach out to grab her, at which point she wakes up. In this dream, she knows it's not really her brother. She suffers intense terror and panic, and is usually unable to get back to sleep. In the other dream, when he puts his face out, he's all dusty, his face streaked with tears, and he's begging her for help. She says in this dream, and as her brother, she knows in her heart it's really him, but something pulls him into the room, the door closes, and she wakes up racked with guilt and fear because she was still frozen on the spot. I've talked to her brother about this house. She says she has never told him what she saw that day, or about hearing noises at night. All he remembers is being pissed for getting in trouble for something he didn't do, because he'd made friends with the kids down the road and they had invited him to come ride ATVs on their property, and being grounded meant he missed out. I asked him if he ever had trouble sleeping in that house, or if there was ever anything weird besides not knowing who moved the attic stuff. He said no, and he was pretty sure it was his sister playing some kind of prank and then denying it after their parents reacted so seriously. Said he knew he had a lot of weird dreams while they lived there, but could never remember what they were about when he woke up, just that they were weird. My family and I once lived back in some of my family's woods. No one could see our little plot, just woods all around. My family lived nearby, but down the dirt road away. We had no light poles put up, so it would get very dark back there. I started to notice a light above the trees. I figured out it was not a star because it would sway, rise quickly, totally disappear, descend behind the trees. This went on for a few days, and I was the only one who had seen it. My dad hired some guys to help him with a deck. My husband sort of knew one and would invite him to dinner after they worked. That light always seemed to get closer when that guy was there. It was even at tree level often. I knew this because I could see the light behind the trees, obviously not in the sky. I showed it to my husband, kids, and the guy, not mentioning it earlier in case I was crazy. My daughter decided to play with it. She said, "Follow me if you're an alien." Then she walked to the left, and it went to the left. She went right, and it did too. She went right again, it followed. That freaked me the hell out. The guy was so freaked out that he left, and the light followed him. It freaking followed him as he left. I edited to add this. I should also say that this man lived in the woods behind us, so it was easy to see the light descend to where he lived. He wasn't very far from us at all, just separated by woods. For about 4 days, that light would follow that man when he left. I thought he was about to get abducted by aliens. I would stare out the window, peering into the darkness for hours because I feared missing a Mel Gibson Science birthday party-like moment that would verify my fears. One night the man did not come. The light was still there, freaking me out. I had just about lost my mind at this point, worried about my kids being abducted by aliens. I yelled at it. "What's your problem, huh? What do you want?" It was following me, walking as I lost my shit. I ended up flipping at the bird and it seemed to dive towards me. I kid you not, in that moment, I thought I had pissed the aliens off and they were about to crash into me. Then it disappeared during the time I had my back to it, running for my life. I told my father what was going on. His response was, "Are you on crack?" I got irate and had to explain that, no, I was not on crack. He gave me a shotgun and told me to just shoot it down next time I saw it. If it is real. It only came back when that man came back, and it left when he left. I did not shoot it down because I figured a shotgun would just piss off aliens. Never saw it again and lived in fear of aliens in the dark woods for the rest of our stay there. Years later, I was reading local news and stumbled across an article that explained the lights. It was an article about how the local cops use drones to catch and other nefarious folks. My jaw dropped. I was about 21 when all that happened and more naive than I am now. Also, this was back before drones were so popular and well known, especially for someone who didn't really use the internet much during that time. I remembered how not long after completing the deck, that man who was visiting us was arrested for charges and some other stuff involving the Mexican Mafia, as it was called. We were pretty shocked because we figured he was just a regular OL, which we don't have an issue with. Mafia stuff though, we didn't like that being near our kids. So I spent a portion of my life terrified of aliens when it was more than likely the police using drones. Whoever was manning the drone was probably bored and decided to mess with us. Or they didn't want the guy or us to catch on, so they went with making us believe they were aliens. Or they were actually aliens and I came up with a reason that my brain can handle better. If it was cops and I had shot it like my father told me to, I would probably still be in prison today. So glad I didn't do that. My uncle used to live way out in the country on a plot he said was a little less than 8 acres. His closest neighbors weren't terribly far away, within quick driving distance, but also just far enough that walking wasn't very viable. Anyways, I spent my 8th grade summer there, and he had one story that scared the shit out of me back then. He had an array of animals on the farm, 3 hunting dogs, pigeons, dozens of chickens, other various birds, a few goats and a lone horse, and every night he would make his rounds through his farm just to make sure everybody was where they were supposed to be and that everything was locked up. One night as he's walking back to his house, his dogs start going wild. He initially doesn't give care to it and continues on his way, but his dogs are just relentlessly barking. He points his flashlight around and doesn't see anything. He gets to the back door of his house, his dog's still barking, and so he turns around one last time. Way out in his fields, he says he does see what looks like a moving shadow. He automatically assumes it's a coyote or some other wild animal and just goes inside. The next night as he goes out to make his rounds, he said he was immediately stopped as he spotted some sort of shadowy figure just a little distance away from his barn. He didn't say anything, but he did take out his gun. Again, his initial thought was maybe a coyote trying to get his chickens. However, as he took a few steps, he said the figure suddenly stood up, almost human-like, and ran into the field, covered in darkness. He said he was so startled he just froze for a moment before yelling out, "Hey!" He didn't give chase to whatever or whoever it was. He did say that for about a week after, his dogs would go ballistic at night, but he never saw the figure again. When he was telling me the story, he said that it probably could have just been a transient, but I don't know. The dude lived in the middle of nowhere and had to drive like 40 minutes to shop. Seems incredibly bizarre for some random homeless to even be in that area. He said it could have also been a black bear, but I don't know either. He wasn't even close to the kind of area I would think black bears inhabit. Dude lived in a rural country farming area, not anywhere remotely close to mountains, forests, etc.